Chapter 13. The Wee Witch Katarina woke up on the couch, feeling lighter after routing that scuzzy rat bastard ogre. A shaft of easy morning sunlight, honey-colored light really, shone through the window, illuminating the foggy air and even lighting up the cobwebs which on this morning hung from the ceiling in an oddly beautiful way. Katarina smiled to herself and dreamily ran her hand through the dust particles as they winked in the sunlight, sparkling like glitter in the currents of air. Spotting a spider perched like a queen in the center of her illuminated web, Katarina began to hum the itsy-bitsy spider, making the hand motions of the game in the air. Caelum heard the familiar tune called up from someplace soft and stopped outside her room. She watched Katarina, smiling, curious. Hey, come over here. You remember the itsy-bitsy spider? Katarina beckoned. Caelum tiptoed over, cautious at first, and knelt down by the side of the couch. Following Katarina's hand movements, Caelum caught up pretty quick, and together they played itsy-bitsy spider in the shaft of sunlight. Terra fidgeted, feeling like there must be something she needed to set right in the kitchen or somewheres in the house. But soon she too sat down by the couch, resting her head on her hand, sleepily watching the game and singing along. You feeling okay today? Terra asked, flashing for an instant to the baseball-sized lump she'd held in her hand. Yeah, I'm all right. Just a little old bump on the head. Katarina touched the back of her head, wincing. I'll be fine. Ooh, what about... Katarina broke into song, raspy and out of tune. Camptown ladies sing this song, doo-dah, doo-dah. Caelum sang along, clapping. Camptown racetrack 5 miles long, all the doo-dah day. Gonna run all night, gonna run all day. Cale, Terra interrupted, a bit reluctantly. We better get to school. Katarina grinned. Why don't y'all skip school today? Let's do something fun. Yeah! Caelum clapped with glee, but Terra didn't budge. We have tests today. We can't miss them unless we have a signed note and a good reason or we'll get in trouble. Oh, those old windbags. Katarina was unimpressed. Come on, Caelum, bring me some paper and something to write with. We'll say you had an important field trip. Caelum giggled. Terra got agitated. Field trips are done by the school. They'll know. Not this one, Katarina chided. This one is hosted by a very important organization. Let's see, what's it called? Caelum piped up. Ooh, what about the Magical See Your Future in Your Dreams Club? Katarina stopped short, suddenly stern. Not that. Not doing that. Come on now. Katarina snapped her fingers to rally the troops and jog their thinking. Something official sounding. Caelum flushed with shame. Why did Katarina think her dreams were so bad? Caelum thought they were kind of cool. In need of rescue, she leaned over and whispered in Terra's ear. Come on, it will help us gather clues for our investigation, remember? Terra rolled her eyes but conceded. Okay, maybe something with horses? How about the Equestrian Society of Greyhouse Lane? Katarina brightened. Oh, fancy. Yeah, perfect. Okay, what's your stationery like? Caelum brought out her crayons and drew her best horse logo. She scrawled in big letters, The Equestrian Society of Greyhouse Lane would like to excuse the absence of Terra and Caelum for a very important field trip. Thank you. Nodding in approval, Katarina fished a pencil from the crayon pile and signed, Wendy Baggs, Chairman and President. Katarina and Caelum giggled conspiratorially. Terra sighed. This is ridiculous. No one's going to believe this. Katarina turned to Terra, eyes bulging crossways, and stuck out her tongue. Chapter 14. Soon, to Caelum's delight, and despite Terra's best too grown-up for a 10-year-old intentions, there they were, Katarina, Terra, and Caelum parked outside of school in Gardenia's beige pickup truck. The one that Katarina had to sit on a phone book just to reach the pedals of, and they'd lost the keys years ago, so it had a screwdriver permanently stuffed into the ignition. Classes had already started, so the hallways were blessedly empty, and no other kids were around to see them pulling up in this jalopy. Katarina gave the command from the driver's seat. All right, go! And the three of them scrambled out of the truck, Toadwell cups, empty cigarette packs, and other detritus falling out as the truck door swung open. They tiptoe ran inside to the principal's office door. Okay, slide it under the door, stage whispered Katarina. Caelum grinned huge. Even Terra was starting to think this was funny. Caelum jammed the awkwardly folded note under the door of the principal's office, and the three of them made a break for it, running back at top speed. By the time they reached the truck, the three of them were laughing so hysterically they barely made it back inside. Doubling over as they pulled at the truck's heavy door, clamoring over one another to reach the seats, but giggling so hard they spilled back out onto the pavement. Finally, smushed together in the cab of the pickup, Katarina revved the motor. Tires screeched as they peeled off, howling in triumph. Next stop, arcade. In a deliriously noisy arcade on a beaten-up stretch of beach boardwalk, one of those places that's simultaneously foul with dingy shadows even at high noon and also gloriously, ecstatically lit up to its rafters, Caelum frantically pressed the levers on a pinball machine that Terra boosted her up to reach. Katarina steadied herself on the side of the noisy machine, trying not to let the rancid low-tide smells of the arcade remind her of the toad well, and cheered. "Come on, give 'em hell, Caelum!" Giddy with the day's turn of events, the sisters raced from game to game, trying rather maniacally to drink it all in, ready to pack a lifetime of fun into a single afternoon of playing hooky. "Oh, look, I'm the 444th player. Do you think it's a clue?" Caelum grinned. "Only if you win," Terra challenged. "Nope, not a clue," concluded Caelum after using up all her cars and dying in the first 3 minutes. "False lead. Those'll happen sometimes." Over at the skee-ball zone, Terra summoned her characteristic solemn precision and threw 200-point balls back-to-back. Caelum, face, hair, and matted stiff with cotton candy, and proud as a peach, jumped up and down, cheering, "My sister's boss of your sister." Katarina nodded at Terra as though seeing her for the first time. With surprise and no small amount of admiration, she said, "Boy, you're not bad at this." Terra grinned shyly. Next stop, grocery store. Katarina had her full moon t-shirt tucked into the back pocket of her ripped-up jean shorts, leaving her with just a yellow paisley bikini top for a shirt, but never mind. It was a hot day for late October, and Katarina's festive mood was beginning to wear thin. The Toadwell hangover she'd somehow dodged in the morning was catching up to her, but she tried to stay fun. She took a long draw on her cigarette and with her free hand veered an enormous cart helter-skelter through the aisles. With laissez-faire encouragement and a wave of the precariously long ash at the end of her cigarette, she called out, "Yeah, sure, throw it in," as the girls piled fluorescently garish breakfast cereals, lollipops, bouncy balls, and every manner of treasure into the cart. "Ooh, look! The witch on the Spicy Spooks hot cocoa has the same color hair as Katarina. Do you think it's a clue?" whispered Caelum. "Only one way to tell," Terra replied, dropping the package into the cart. At the cash register, Katarina fished in her pockets. Shit. I forgot we already spent everything at the arcade." Her head rolled back on his shoulders, a helpless feeling creeping in. Sweat appeared on her forehead. The pretty teenage checkout clerk raised her eyebrows, pursed her lips, and looked Katarina up and down with unconcealed disdain. Terra withered in embarrassment. Caelum turned a hopeful face toward Katarina, unwilling to let the dream of a shopping cart full of bouncy balls and Fruitios die. Dutifully, Terra stepped in and pulled 6 carefully hoarded dollar bills out of her pocket. "Here, I have these." Okay. Let's just get stuff to make cookies." Katarina grabbed a few things out of the cart and long-tossed them onto the conveyor belt before shoving the cart backwards toward the aisles with a rackety clack, making its disassembly somebody else's problem. Katarina caught sight of the disappointment that Caelum was barely strangling down, lest it turn into full-blown tears in the middle of the grocery store. She reached over and tousled Caelum's hair. "It's all right. We'll get that stuff next time. Promise." Chapter 15. Gardenia bumbled in the door from work a touch tipsy and lit up on contact with the festive mood emanating out of the kitchen. Boisterous music blared from a big set of wooden speakers that Gardenia had won in a poker game a few years back, and everyone busied themselves cleaning up in preparation for making cookies. With a shrug and a chuckle, he cracked the door open a nudge wider and let the dogs in. "Well, shoot, if it's a party, come on in, doggies." Gardenia's chuckle turned into a big belly giggle as the dogs nearly knocked him over with their enthusiasm to get into the house. Caelum and Terra squealed in delight. How many times had they been tempted to sneak Lena the sad-eyed chow and even old number 10, the lanky hunting dog, into the house? Today ruled. Katarina looked up, peeved that the dogs were messing up the room she was trying to clean, and knowing in the morning Gardenia would likely come to his senses and wonder who'd done such a thing. Gardenia, what in the hell? Letting these mutts in here? Oh, they're just coming in to say hello, Gardenia demurred. Terra and Caelum gleefully chased Lena and 10 as they galumphed around, jumping on every piece of furniture in the house. Can we let him sleep in the house tonight? Can we? The sisters sang out in unison. Of course! They're family, ain't they? Gardenia boomed jovially. Both dogs piled onto Terra's lap, licking and slobbering over every inch of her face as she teetered backwards onto the couch. Winded from all the romping, Caelum too flopped herself down onto the carpet. With her ear to the ground, and despite all the living room ruckus, Caelum detected a strange noise. Something akin to a low hum growing louder. Eureka! Maybe she was finally receiving a serious clue for her investigation. Pressing her ear more intently to the floor, she listened in. Was it a sound or a feeling? It unnerved her like the rattle of a thing about to come loose. Caelum, what are you doing? Terra called out. Katarina joined in. Caelum, girl, either start cleaning that floor or get up off it. Caelum sat up reluctantly. Katarina scrubbed at a stain on the wall. Caelum paused, hearing the low hum again. You don't hear that? Hear what? Terra asked. Caelum, a little uncertain. It's a rumble like a train or something far off, coming this way. Katarina scowled. Caelum, you can't be getting weird now. Well, you just can't. Get up off that floor. You don't hear nothing. And somebody put those stinking mutts back outside where they belong before I turn them into a fur coat. Terra let out a deep sigh. Come on, dogs, she whistled, and the dogs followed her out the back door. Caelum, though. Caelum took Katarina's protest as a sign that this probably was a clue after all. Another one Katarina didn't want her to know about. So she scooched out of Katarina's eyeline and furtively resumed her ear-to-the-ground position. Was it something that needed her help to be born? Or perhaps something that she and Terra would have to hunt down before it arrived if they were to survive it? Oh, well, pardon me there, Caledonia Begonia, Gardenia chuckled, just about tripping over Caelum on the way back to his recliner. He steadied himself, shoving a bit of morning glory vine that had been dangling in front of his eyes back up into his stocking cap. Caelum popped up quick. Sorry, I didn't mean to get in the way. I was just listening. Gardenia waved off her apology. Don't you worry, hun. He squinted down at Caelum. My word, you got those witchy eyes just like Katarina, don't you? Caelum scrunched up her face, scowling. No, I don't. Why even would I? Taking no note of Caelum's protest at this comparison, Gardenia plucked a bright white flower from one of his pockets. Hushed and delicate, its pearlescent petals fairly glowed with an inner light. Here you go, hun. Little old something from my garden. Gardenia held the bright blossom out to Caelum with dainty ceremony. This flower don't never lose its scent. It don't never wilt, and it don't never die. Gardenia smiled, bopped her on the nose with the fragrant blossom, and placed it in her hand before stumbling back off to his recliner. Well, now, this really was something. Caelum was sure of it. The air around this little flower was very, very still and very, very silent. Caelum pressed her face in close, nuzzled her nose into the velvety soft petals, and inhaled deeply. An exuberant, earthy sweetness exploded through her senses until sweetness became all there was in the whole wide world. The gray haze around her seemed to blush with warm color. Pinks like cotton candy fluff and oranges like sunsets over vast expanses of water glowed to life inside the usually dismal fog. Bang! Caelum's reverie was interrupted by the slamming of the back door. Dogs are back outside, like anybody who needs a fur coat in Florida anyway. Terra glared at Katarina. Katarina didn't respond, focused as she was on her newfound task of rummaging in the cabinets for an assortment of mixing bowls, mismatched measuring cups, and wrong-sized spoons. Caelum ran over to Terra. You have to smell this. Gardenia gave it to me. It's a magic flower. Terra looked askance at the little blossom. Nah, that's just those ones he's always carting around. Those ain't magic.
It's magic, I promise, and it's probably going to help us.
Caelum cupped her hand around her mouth and dramatically whispered,
Unravel the mystery.
Caelum pointed her finger behind her cupped hand to hide it from the wee witch's view and goggled her eyes wildly in Katarina's direction. Splop! They whipped their heads around to see a raw egg broken open on the kitchen floor. Katarina had started the cookies. The girls ran to her side.
Ooh, the cookies! We want to help!
Katarina was in deep concentration, trying to steady her shaking hands as she poured something white from a mason jar into a measuring cup. Not right now. Terra surveyed the ingredients on the counter. Hey, you know you're supposed to use sugar, not salt, right? Katarina licked her finger, tasting what she'd poured. Terra was right. Damn it! Katarina slammed the measuring cup on the counter. Looking down, she noticed the broken egg on the floor. She shook her head and gritted her teeth with a hard, bitten-down sadness. I can't do anything right for you girls, can I? Shoulders slumped, Katarina sulked toward the toad well, but stopped short at the sudden bing-bong-bing of the doorbell. Chapter 16. Was that the doorbell? Bing-bong-bing. There it went again. Before Katarina could tell her not to, Terra bolted to answer it. She flung the door wide, and then the door must have flung itself wide, too, because it just about flew off its hinges. And there stood a woman, just as pretty as a whisker on a kitten. Backlit by the dazzling late afternoon sun, she stood about 5 feet tall, with bright pink hair, huge blue eyes, and pretty pink freckles on light blue skin. Matter of fact, she looked precisely like a paper doll in human form, down to the tips of her delicate toes and her huge, bustling dress made of various and patterned, brightly colored paper. Framed in the gray house doorway, her marvelous outline looked so much like the woman who'd held a ringing bell in Caelum's dream. Glimmers of delight warbled through Caelum, mixing with the eerie sensation of having seen this all before, and tugged at by Katarina's suggestion that having seen it all before might be something worrisome about Caelum. A woozy mixture, to be sure, but never mind. What fresh wonder was this? Carrying 2 overstuffed laundry bags for luggage, the woman barged past Terra and let herself right in. Why, you must be Terra and Caelum. Oh, I haven't seen you girls in an age. No worry, plenty of time for catching up, she crowed delightedly. Well, who's that now, your sister? Asked Gardenia. Katarina squinted up at the visitor. Jeannie? She wiped flour off her hands with a ratty dish towel. Lord, are you my Jeannie? Are we really gonna get a visit from the real Jeannie? Yes, darling, of course it's me, your little paper doll Jeannie in the flesh. Jeannie placed 2 hands under her chin in a gesture of ta-da. You're looking, well, you look like yourself. That's good. Well, come on over here and let me give you a hug. Katarina obliged. They hugged, awkwardly at first, and then Katarina laughed. Boy, it's been a long time. Too long. Now, girls, where shall I put my things? Caelum stood slack-jawed. This unexpected visitor carried a scent with her that was sweet as butter melting on cinnamon toast. Terra observed with quiet vigilance as Paper Jeannie bustled down the hall. Her skirts made a festive racket as she walked, something between a maraca and a rattlesnake. She paused outside Minky's room. Well, who, pray tell, lives here? That's the ogre Minky's room, offered Terra. Jeannie whipped her head around fast and glowered at Katarina. An ogre? Katarina, you've got an ogre living right here in the house with these kids. Caelum jumped between the 2 of them and squeaked up at Jeannie. We don't know where he is, though. We ain't seen him anywheres. Katarina crossed her arms and squinted down at Jeannie. You can set up in there. He ain't coming back. I got rid of him. In Katarina's mind, a dusk-darkened figure began to emerge from the tumult of phantom wings that had been plaguing her since the morning of Jeannie's phone call and Caelum's dream. Have you now? Jeannie's face lost all light. She stared a hole dead through Katarina, then shifted abruptly and completely back into her cheerful demeanor. Well then, I'll make myself at home. Paper Jeannie bustled into Minky's room and set down her bags. After a feisty burst of banging and clanging, she emerged with an overflowing cardboard box and a trash bag full of Minky's old smelly shoes and socks, pizza boxes and other junk. Out with the old! Terra and Caelum lingered nearby, gobsmacked by Jeannie's swift action. Nice work. You want a smoke to celebrate? Katarina held out her crinkled-up pack of cigarettes to Jeannie as a meager peace offering. Ew, you know I've always hated those things. Terrible for your skin, too. Jeannie studied on Katarina's complexion through squinted eyes. Suit yourself. Katarina lit up a cigarette, took a big drag, grinning at Jeannie like a rebellious teenager, and blew the smoke right in Jeannie's face. Jeannie coughed and waved the smoke away, prim with disgust. Hands on her hips, Jeannie paused to take in the gray house with its dismal haze and peeling wallpaper, all its furniture sagging and faded and tired. My, so gray in here. What this place needs is a little color. Paper Jeannie pulled a sheet of glittery stickers out of her skirt pocket and placed a teeny sparkling rainbow on each of the girls' shirts. There now, that's a start. Caelum looked down at her now rainbow-glittered stickered t-shirt, thinking that this really was the coolest day ever. All at once it dawned on her that she and Jeannie shared almost the same shade of pink and blue hair. She smiled and held a lock of her own hair out toward Jeannie with the shyness of a church girl realizing that another little girl has on the same dress, and daring to hope that this might make them friends. I know, right? Winked Jeannie with a giggle and a toss of her curls. Chapter 17. Next morning, Caelum popped out of bed early like if it was Christmas morning.
Terra, get up.
Terra squinted at the clock. Dang, my alarm hasn't even rung yet. What are you doing up?
Caelum overloud whispered, Don't you want to see if Paper Jeannie's still here? She's definitely got to know something about the Wee Witch.
Caelum rubbed her hands together in gleeful anticipation.
Let's go spy.
Terra rustled herself up out of bed. Together they tiptoed down the hall to Minky's, now Jeannie's, closed bedroom door, but pulled up short when they heard voices coming from the other side. Jeannie's voice was strained and teary. I don't know if I can do it. It's just so hard. Shuffling and paper tearing sounds rattled from the other side of the door like Jeannie was cleaning up the room all over again, and then a male voice answered. Oh, of course she can do it. I'll handle everything. I always do. Little Dumpling doesn't have to worry about a thing. Franklin's got you, sugar. Caelum and Terra looked at each other, puzzled. Who's Franklin? Caelum whispered. Terra shrugged. Ugh, I hope it's not another weird dude in the house. We better leave him alone. They crept away, leaving Jeannie to her guest. Chapter 18. Outside school, students lollygagged on the sidewalk before classes started up. Hutch and Belle sat on a planter in some kind of heated argument. Yes, I did. I just saw a skank run under them bushes, insisted Belle. That was not a skank. It was a skink. Trust me, they're different. Caelum and Terra straggled off the bus and joined them. What's a skank? Asked Caelum, bouncing up on the planter. Oh, never mind. Hutch shook her head and rolled her eyes at Belle. Hey, who was that I saw taking out all that trash at your house yesterday? Oh, yeah, I saw her too. Her dress was amazing. Belle pulled out a macrame friendship bracelet fastened into a clipboard and set to weaving it over top of her school books. She looked like a great big paper doll. That's Jeannie, Terra started to answer, but Caelum interrupted.
Yeah, Paper Jeannie. She's our fairy godmother.
Caelum waggled her fingers above her head, adding air sparkles. Terra dramatically face-palmed just out of Caelum's view. No, she's not. She's Katarina's sister. She really doesn't seem anything like Katarina, though. Maybe she was adopted. Caelum went on, undeterred.
Or maybe the Wee Witch Katarina put a spell on her too, and now she's captive in our house, just like us.
Belle and Hutch looked at Caelum, amused. Whoever she is, her clothes are rad. I'm like, that's my dream prom dress, and it would look great with this new charm I got with Jimmy Bob Little's $5. Belle paused her weaving and showed off a bejeweled necklace pendant in the shape of a fire ant. Yo! Hutch gave Belle a huge high five. The school bell rang, and the girls scurried inside. School that day wasn't even half bad.
At her new seat in the front row, which she surmised was in fact the bad kids' row, Caelum found a friend. Jason would make faces behind Miss Mumblecrust's back when they weren't looking and cook up little games to amuse themselves with instead of listening to her drone on. Caelum was scared of getting caught playing up, and yet the relief of being around a normal person instead of one of those prim little children sitting in the rows behind her more than made up for the fear. During history lessons, she discovered a rather large wart on her hand, and during recess, she'd figured out just how easily the prim girls were frightened as she chased them around the recess yard, laughing like a gall-dang loon and threatened to touch them with it as they ran away squealing. And so, even though school was almost halfway fun, still, Caelum counted the hours till she could get home. She needed to know more about this mysterious paper genie. And, she thought, kicking the heels of her sneakers noisily against her school chair, she needed to figure out the right question. Something that could unlock any clues their new fairy godmother might have about the Wee Witch Katarina. About Katarina's constant state of strangeness, to be sure, but maybe also the new edge of unease that had entered Katarina's eyes these past few days. Maybe that too. Chapter 19. Racing off the bus, Caelum and Terra booked it all the way down the dirt road straight home, and yippee to high heaven because Paper Genie was waiting right there at the front door of the gray house ready to greet them, holding a huge box of art supplies. The girls followed her all the way into the kitchen, rapid-firing questions that Genie ignored, too immersed in the art project she was preparing.
Are you really made out of paper? Did you ever catch on fire? Do fairy godmothers have moms? Oh, glitter! Can you help us make our Halloween costumes?
Genie dumped the giant as all get-out box onto the kitchen table and laid into the pile, pulling out handfuls of colorful paper, glitter, glue, markers, crayons, scissors, tiny seashells, twigs, broken doll heads, and of course more shiny stickers. Caelum was tickled to her toes. "Have you girls ever made paper dolls?" asked Genie. Caelum and Terra shook their heads no. "Well then, I'll have to show you how. I like to start with the body and give it changeable heads." Genie handed each of them a pair of scissors and the instruction to dream up a new character. Snip, snip, bits of paper in all colors flew like confetti. Markers and crayons scribbled and squeaked. Glue globbed out every which way, salted with glitter and bits of feather. Clearing her throat ceremoniously, Genie presented her paper doll. Onto its body she fastened the first head, that of a lovely woman with flowing hair all decked out in seashells. Genie squeaked in a tiny voice.
I'm Serendipia, the kidnapped mermaid, living an ever-so-distressed life on land. Won't you please help me escape and return to my home?
Caelum and Terra oohed and awed and fretted at the plight of Miss Serendipia. Genie nudged Caelum to go next. Caelum fished into her mess pile and pulled out the head of a princess. Studying her creation for completion, she thought the better and fixed a unicorn horn onto the center of its head. She popped this new head onto the neck of Genie's doll and crooned,
I'm Pegasussia, mistress of all the creatures who live in the cloud realms. Won't you come visit us?
Terra's turn. She'd drawn the head of the world's bravest explorer, and she gave him the gruff voice of an old man with an exaggerated southern drawl.
And I'm Scooter McGrew, the greatest explorer that ever lived, and I'll tell you what, if it exists, I know where to find it.
The three of them laughed like banshees. The lights in the room seemed to dim then, or to focus into a single spotlight, as Genie slowly and with grave ceremony revealed another paper doll. This one wore an ornate robe and held a golden bowl out of which real-life actual steam rose. The girls sat transfixed. Paper Genie spoke in a whispery, ancient voice, part snake's hiss and part wind in the tops of the trees.
I am Sybil, the original Sibylant Sister.
What's a Sibylant Sister? Asked Caelum, intrigued.
It means I have the gift.
Just as you girls do, just as Genie does, and Katarina too, though you'd hardly know it, would you? Caelum's heart leapt a somersault. Here it was. No one had ever spoken to them directly about the Wee Witch Katarina. No one who knew anything, anyway. Genie switched back to her own voice and addressed the paper doll as herself. Oh, my! And what gift would that be? She giggled as though flattered at the mere thought that she might be gifted. Sybil's voice rasped.
The sight, the feeling, the sensing, the tasting of what's coming on the air. This one, Sybil pointed to Caelum, has it in her dreams. The ones where she sees what comes tomorrow. The ones where she knows more than she knows.
The Sybil doll rapped Caelum's knuckles. Caelum drew her hand back, eyes wide. How did Sybil or Jeannie know about her dreams? Sybil turned to Terra.
And this one feels it in her bones. Her inner compass is strong.
Sybil tapped Terra's arm, then touched her nose like Santa Claus, letting on that he knows a secret. Both girls sat silent, bewitched. Terra tugged at her braids, real nervous-like. It was now or never. Caelum knew it. She peered up at Jeannie.
Sybil, do you know anything about witches?
But of course I do, whispered Sybil. Caelum looked around to make sure Katarina was out of earshot.
Well, if Katarina is a witch, why doesn't she have any powers?
Jeannie broke character slightly, choking back a surprised cough. She raised an eyebrow at Caelum and then snapped back into her Sybil persona. Ah, we have a smart one here. I see you have located the question.
So what's the answer?
Asked Caelum. Sybil raised a finger to her lips, swearing the girls to secrecy. Now that you have found the right question, you must find the right person to answer it. But why can't you just answer it? Asked Terra. Jeannie, still fully inhabiting Sybil, stared into an unseen distance. Sometimes I know, and sometimes I don't. My channels are open, but it all comes in scrambled. There's a break in the line, Jeannie grabbed Caelum by the wrist.
Like you, I'm an antenna to the whole world, but then my own mind escapes me.
Jeannie fixed urgent eyes on Caelum and seemed to pin her there.
Sometimes the gift can feel like a curse.
There was a faint buzz in the air, a pop and a warble like a radio changing stations.
Do you hear it?
Now Jeannie's eyes went so wide they showed the whites all around.
Something is lost in a maze. Something runs for its life and never stops running.
Caelum and Terra held perfectly still. Terra eyed the door.
Katarina and I, we're not so different in this way.
Jeannie tightened her grip on Caelum's arm and leaned in close. Her hot breath stank of swamp bog.
But you have a chance we didn't. You can accept the gift without this tangled curse.
Scared she might pee her pants, Caelum yanked her wrist free. Katarina appeared in the kitchen, cocked her head at the tense scene, and sidled over to investigate. In an instant, Sybil's spotlight disappeared. The atmosphere of the kitchen returned to its usual dingy haze. Shaking the ruffles of her dress like a bird in a bird bath, Paper Jeannie abruptly came back to herself. Oh, my goodness, look at the time. Well, y'all two should be doing your homework, and I need to be whipping up tonight's feast. Katarina nodded, unsmiling. Jeannie swooped the art supplies back into the box with great flourish and shooed Caelum and Terra off to do their homework. Chapter 20. There she stood, our little popsicle stick. Alone in front of Terra's small dressing mirror, she examined herself with a fretful sort of attention for signs of some newly identified thing. What gift now? What curse? Caelum studied her pale pink like Jeannie kind of hair as if it knew a secret she didn't. She pulled at her eyelids to peer more closely into her supposedly witchy-like Katarina eyes. She touched her forehead in the place where Katarina had made like she was rubbing away some type of worrisome stain or defect. She stared and stared into her own face, and as she did, Caelum found an unease there as dark as the center of the toad well. as untouchable as the pain at the bottom of a loose tooth, and twice as fascinating. No, normal girl. She was a normal girl. She was not like them, nor would she ever be. From the kitchen, Paper Genie called out, "Caelum, get out here. Food's getting cold." Chapter 21. In the gray house kitchen, Caelum, Terra, Jeannie, Katarina, and Gardenia sat around a dinner table strewn with half-empty plates of chicken legs, piles of mashed potatoes, heaps of green bean casserole, and hero-sized helpings of mac and cheese. Feasty, greasy, salty, crispy, and sure enough a very fine meal. Nobody, not the least among them, was going hungry tonight. And the Wee Witch Katarina, well, you'd barely know her, 'cause tell you what, she was positively incandescent, bright as a harvest moon as she and the paper doll Jeannie recounted old tall tales and laughed at inside jokes until they wheezed and squealed and doubled over sideways like a couple of schoolgirls. Or, remember that one time baking cookies with Grandma Eva when you started the... Paper Genie stammered in delight. Katarina held her hands up in an ostentatious plea of innocence. "I did not start it." "My foot! You're the one that threw the flour," insisted Jeannie. "It was an accident. But then she tried to put icing on my nose and mist went straight up my nose instead." Katarina threw her head back, laughing, and for a moment she looked joyful and easy in the way of a small child. "Next thing you know," Jeannie grinned mischievously toward Gardenia and the girls, "we were throwing everything in that kitchen at each other. Remember that?" "Oh, but Grandma Eva was the one who started it with the water." Katarina shook her head, cackling. Caelum and Terra loved getting all this gossip on Katarina and laughed almost as uproariously. Even Gardenia chuckled along wistfully. "And then you snuck out the bathroom window to get the garden hose and blast her through the kitchen window," squealed Paper Genie. "But she beat me to it," Katarina howled. "The look on your face when you came around the corner and she already had the hose. Boy, she got you good." Katarina got louder and a touch wilder, too. "That water was freezing, and then Granddad drove up and saw all of us out in the yard. Oof, covered in flour and egg yolk, and God, you remember how mad he used to get?" Jeannie's excitement waned. "Oh, I do remember how mad. He slammed that car door, his face turning purple. That old coot. Remember how he'd stomp around?" Katarina stomped her feet. Paper Genie touched her face and laughed nervously. "Don't remind me." "What in the holy hell is going on?" Katarina threw her arms wide in a pretty good impression of her granddad's outrage, but maybe too good, 'cause she swatted her half-empty wine glass and sent it flying. Wine sprayed upways like blood from a severed artery, and the glass crashed against the wall with a shock and a smash, and glass slivers shooting every which way. Caelum and Terra yelped and covered their faces. Gardenia stared, dumb with surprise. Jeannie, the glass just having missed her head, let out a piercing scream. She drew up into a fetal position and whimpered. Her paper dress rustled and shook. "Paper Genie, are you okay?" whispered Caelum. Then came a sound like something awful tearing itself free from inside Jeannie's dress. Caelum held her breath and tried to become very small. Terra sat up, watchdog straight. Katarina narrowed her eyes at Jeannie, waiting. With an enormous shudder and sudden as a snake bite, there's really no other way to say this except to just say it, Jeannie ripped clear in half, right down the middle, like a paper doll, torn in two. She emitted a high, mournful squeal like an enormous receiver losing its signal. Her two halves waved in the still night air. Gardenia, baffled, pushed his chair back. He tried to gather Caelum and Terra and get them out of the way. They followed, but only to the doorway, where they clung tight, riveted by the spectacle. Caelum's tummy went into a kind of free-fall as the gray air grew dense all around her. In moments like these, she right appreciated the gray air. It gave her a place to be, a keep stillness and a quietness to remain within, while whatever was meant to unfold next unfolded. Katarina, unsurprised, merely shook her head in disgust. Oh, not this freaky crap again. Paper Genie's two halves wavered. They struggled to reunite themselves, but couldn't match their edges back up. The halved genie loosed a guttural, gargling moan. Beneath that moan, a static surged. A confusion of overlaid voices rattled forth from Genie's split self, like a radio dial catching snippets of clear stations as it crossed through a sea of noise. Franklin, the man they'd heard in Genie's room, the paper doll Sybil, and another voice that bellowed like a fervent preacher. Not this trash again! Katarina pounded her fists on the table. With one sweep of her arm, she shoved every dish in her path onto the ground where they crashed with malicious uproar. Not this shit again! Why can't you just be Genie? Why is that so hard? Katarina picked up the few remaining dishes still on the table and smashed them on the floor one at a time. Just stay Genie, for fuck's sake! Katarina stood over Genie, eyes wild with rage, as though she could bully her out of what was about to happen next. Why can't you just be one person, the way you're supposed to be? The radio's squeal went silent. Genie's two halves crinkled and fussed and finally fused back together. When she picked her head up, she was in the same body, wearing the same clothes, but she had the voice, mannerisms, and indeed even the face of an entirely different person. Franklin was a young man with a short red beard, angry flashing eyes, and something of a cowboy swagger about him. He glared up at Katarina with flinty relish, as though he'd been awaiting the arrival of this very moment. You know what's funny? He drawled slowly. Is Genie don't even know the answer to that question. 'Cause I protect her. Franklin reached over and lifted Katarina's cigarettes right out of her jeans pocket. He lit one and inhaled deeply. But you and I do. What? I don't even know you, stammered Katarina, incredulous. Franklin narrowed his eyes. You know me, and you know why Genie has to disappear, too. 'Cause you know all about disappearing. Franklin shook his head, disgusted. He slumped over, haggard with a bone-deep weariness, and rested his forehead on the thumb of the hand that held the cigarette. A slight rhythmic hunching of his back was accompanied by the renewed sound of ripping paper, by the frantic searching warble of the radio dial. When he lifted his head, another change had come. Genie now had the face of the preacher, short gray hair, hollow cheeks, and a grizzle of whiskers. Widening his sincere hangdog eyes and gesturing broadly to the room, the preacher boomed, I only demand to know why for it is that I am banished. Lividly he shook his finger at an imaginary congregation, or perhaps a group of persecutors. They may have power over my body, but only the Lord Jesus hath power over my body and my soul. A cold panic entered Katarina. Stop it, Genie. You're doing this on purpose. Paper ripped. The preacher's face changed. Franklin returned. Happened to you, too. But you just left. You left Genie there, and you didn't tell anyone. That makes it your fault. Katarina's outrage come undone. A clatter of wings invaded the edges of her vision. What's my fault? This is just your craziness talking. You've always been cracked. Now Genie had the face of an old woman with wispy gray hair wrapped in a tattered red headscarf. She spoke with the swampy voice of the Sibyl.
Hawkman, Stalkman, little girl stew.
No, that's not real. You made that up, Katarina pleaded, fending off the dark presence that was threatening to emerge from the plague of wing beats throbbing inside her head.
If he's gonna catch me, then he's gonna catch you,
hissed Sybil. I never wanted to leave you there. Katarina clutched at her own throat, squeezed her eyes shut.
But you did.
I never wanted anything bad to happen to you, screeched Katarina, fragile and cornered. For a long moment, all was ripping, and then silence. Genie emerged. She peered up at Katarina, holding her gaze, eyes wide in confusion as if she were a latecomer to a frightening scene already in progress. Red-faced, weeping, Katarina shrieked, "I would have protected you!" She ran for the toad well, slamming the screen door shut behind her. Caelum watched the scene, nearly paralyzed, rocking from one foot to the other as the gray air grew ever thicker around her, till she was almost not even there at all, teeny as a straw that could blow away in the slightest breeze, and quieter still. Terra started to clean up the mess. She paused to shake Caelum's shoulder and motion for her to go to bed. In the dark, Caelum pulled the blankets all the way up over her face, despite the night's unbroken heat. Clutching her gardenia flower, willing it to fill her hot little cocoon with a kind of safety, she wondered how it was that inside one there could be so many. The question fragmented her sleep. Out back under a starless sky, as if it were possible at all, so much crying had made Katarina even thinner. Hovering at the well, the wee witch was slight as a single chicken bone. She moved as slowly as one moves in a nightmare of the sort where you try to run, but your feet are caught in tar, your body bound in spiders' webs. The menacing wings beat closer and closer still. Chapter 22. Morning was cottony silent. Caelum opened her eyes slowly, trying to detect what it was about this morning that felt so different than the night before. Terra's empty bed was neatly made, but that was normal. Caelum raised her palms up, hoping to sense something on the air. Nothing doing. Suddenly, she saw it. A treasure, sitting right on the nightstand by her bed, no bigger than a cocker spaniel puppy. Impossibly delicate porcelain that must have been painted with the world's tiniest paintbrush, it was fashioned into the shape of a grandmother who stirred a steaming pot and smiled lovingly down at her granddaughter. Next to it lay a crinkled swatch of pale yellow paper with tiny pink polka dots torn from Jeannie's skirts. The paper was covered all over in curlicue handwriting and drawings of people called Great-Grandma Eva and Grandma Althea. A note from Jeannie, definitely a clue. Jeannie's note read, Caelum, Great-Grandma Eva gave this music box to her daughter Althea when she was a little girl. A music box, Caelum beamed. Althea passed it on to Katarina and I. Now it is for you and Terra. This melody knows that the path of repair always leads you straight to the break in the line. May you keep your minds in one piece and your hearts safe and snug. Love, your Aunt Jeannie. Caelum ran her fingertips over the curly handwriting and whispered to herself, Aunt Jeannie? She reveled in her beautiful new gift, wondering how anyone had made something so intricate. Finding a little gold crank on the side, she twisted it and snuggled back down into bed. As a nostalgic tune plucked itself up from the brass gears hidden inside the porcelain figurines, Caelum lazily nuzzled her nose into her gardenia flower. A beatific rush of sweet scent bathed each note of the tinkling melody that rose up out of that music box until, note by note, the mundane clutter of her bedroom ceased to hold her at all. Caelum floated up out of the deadening gray air of the suffocating gray house. The dusty walls melted, the sagging ceiling vanished, up into a giddy weightlessness of the kind where a big old red sun perpetually set on ginormous heaps of billowing clouds, up into a vast illuminated expanse that stretched out in all directions all around her. Purples, oranges, and pinks glowed from within soft, puffy fields, and out of those fields castles arose, formed, then cascaded, reformed and shifted shape, ever lovelier each time. Ruby caves and periwinkle grottos appeared, sheltering narwhals and cocooning mermaids. Peacocks pranced and piglets tumbled over billowing archways and across lilac valleys. The joy here was lilting and light and unspeakably kind. The music swaddled Caelum, and the gardenia's sweet scent held gravity and time at bay. And still she floated, and still she took in the ecstatic beauty of a realm built entirely of cloud. From an immense cave in the furthest reach of this cosmos, something emerged. Shrouded in a baby-sweet gossamer light, it moved toward Caelum, slowly, steadily. Its wing beats stirred the clouds. Its hooves pounded the ground in a rhythm that became the very breath of the sky. Caelum held perfectly still at the edge where wonder falls into the abyss of awe. Slowly, steadily, she came into view. The magnificently winged beast had a single iridescent horn in the center of her head which shone like starlight. Her gentleness was absolute but formidable. Touching down on a floating plain where Caelum awaited, the Pegasus sent a gust of wind that held Caelum inside it, comforting as an embrace. And then there she stood, directly before Caelum, her enormous eyes glittering with all kind of ancient knowing and never before spoken out loud secret wisdom. Pegasus looked directly into Caelum's eyes, and as she did, words flowed from the immense and silent creature straight into Caelum's mind. "We are here. Find us at the clearing in the woods. We'll be waiting for you." Pegasus touched her horn to Caelum's feet and disappeared. The melody of the music box crescendoed majestically. Caelum was back in her room, gasping for breath. The rancid heaviness of the gray house bore down on her like a stomachache. Today, she decided, no school. Chapter 23. Caelum scampered out of the bedroom dressed in a pair of long dungarees and Velcro sneakers, the better to hunt for the Pegasus in. She spotted a pot of boiled peanuts on the stove and shoved a soggy handful in her pocket, making careful sure not to drop her new music box. "Terra!" "In here," Terra yelled back from Jeannie's room. Caelum found her standing in the now empty room, hands on her hips, looking around like she was trying to make sense of a crime scene. "Jeannie left. Her stuff's gone." "I thought so." "How come? You had another spooky dream?"
"Not about Jeannie, but look, I woke up and this was by my bed."
Caelum showed Terra the music box and the note. "Let me see." Terra looked at the note but couldn't quite make out the curlicue handwriting. It just looked like a bunch of nonsense and paper doll drawings.
"Terra, listen, when I played it, I saw this so pretty white horse, just like the Pegasus. I think she's out in the woods. We have to go find her."
Terra tossed the note aside dismissively. Okay, after school we'll go."
"No, we have to go now. I'm telling you, Jeannie knows about Katarina, and she left us this for a reason. It wasn't just a dream, I promise. This is definitely a real major clue this time. Listen."
Caelum cranked the music box and closed her eyes, waiting for the vision to transport them both. The pretty melody played, but nothing happened. When Caelum opened her eyes, Terra was staring at her with amused sympathy, trying hard to suppress a laugh.
"Fine. I don't care if you don't believe me. I'll go by myself,"
said Caelum.
"You ain't going nowhere but school, Caelum. Get back here."
Ignoring her sister, Caelum skedaddled right out the door before Terra could catch her. Chapter 24. Out in the yard, Caelum summoned one of Gardenia's dogs, number 10, to come along. More of an adventure that way. They took off from the gray house, crossed the dirt road, and cut through Belle's front yard. Belle was in her bedroom getting ready for school, dancing up a storm to the tunes that blasted out of her plastic boombox, and Caelum's legs sure did twitch to want to join her, but nope, she was on a mission. Caelum crouch ran low like a commando beneath Belle's window so as not to be seen, crossed the backyard, and disappeared behind a dense tangle of kudzu vine. Caelum and 10 marched along purposefully beneath tall, spindly pines, Caelum feeling like she'd just unlocked a secret. Skipping school by herself was kind of fun. And whatever if Terra didn't believe her. She could do this adventure on her own. Caelum hopped up on a log, using it as a balance beam, and leapt over a small creek, pretending she was an Olympian winning the long jump. As the trees grew thicker, the harsh sunlight became dappled and gentle. Pockets of coolness rose up off the still sleeping forest floor. Caelum slowed her pace. Without Terra or any of the other kids from the neighborhood to run and do cartwheels, throw sticks at each other, and lead the way, Caelum pretty soon realized she was lost. She turned in circles, but every direction looked the same. The once familiar forest now stretched out, disorientingly empty and strange. How big was it? How far had she come? Broken only by the snapping of twigs underfoot, the forest's quiet became enormous, and within it, an eerie sort of sadness crept up on Caelum. Crept slow as her footsteps, and quiet as her own breath, till all at once it had her. It seemed to Caelum that a cavern might any minute open up under her feet. A dark black well, all full of nothing. Except it wasn't nothing, was it? No. Something. Always there. Always ignored. A loneliness that had yearned so long without ever once being seen. Caelum became desperate to avoid its pull. She wanted to bolt off in any direction. Images of dying of thirst while discovering that the forest went on indefinitely flashed in her mind. Darn it, dang it, damn it. Caelum looked down at Ten, who, oblivious, panted happily by her side. She kneeled down, getting nose to nose with the loyal, if not a bit idiotic dog. You know all about getting lost, don't you, boy? She said to Ten, scratching him behind the ears and nuzzling her face up to his. Before he was Gardenia's dog, number 10 had simply appeared in the yard of the gray house, skinny and lost, and with a large 10 scrawled in black spray paint on each side of his body. No one knew how long he'd been lost for, where he'd come from, nor what the 10 referred to. You were lost and you found me. Now I need you to find her, said Caelum, feeling a bit foolish, but figuring it was worth a try. Caelum pressed her forehead to Ten's and summoned the image of Pegasus into her mind, silently repeating her words. We're here. Find us at the clearing in the woods. Behind them, a twig snapped. Caelum looked up and saw a flash of white through the trees. Ten saw it too and took off. Wait up for me, Caelum called out. She ran as hard as she could after 10. Ahead through the trees, Caelum saw bright white flashes of light. This was it. Holy moly, no fib in real life, Pegasus was here. Caelum ran harder. Rays of morning sunlight shimmered off the creature's pearlescent wings and pierced the canopy of trees. Branches broke as its feet stamped the ground. Wings beat the air and sent gusts of wind toward Caelum, which smelled of cotton candy and lavender, nutmeg and soap bubbles. Panting, hit with a stitch in her side, Caelum was right at the edge of not being able to run another step. Then came the basket, the one made of light and cloud. It wove itself all through her, like to carry her onward, like to say, you think you can't, but we know you can. Chapter 25. Busting through the scrub palms into a sandy clearing, Caelum lost sight of the light. She could feel the ground heavy under her feet again. Suddenly, twice as winded as she ever was, Caelum doubled over, hands on her knees, gulping to catch her breath. The Pegasus was nowhere to be seen. Instead, Caelum focused disoriented eyes on a rickety, oddball sight. A small box truck had managed to get itself all the heck way out here into the woods. But not an ordinary truck. No, sirree, Bob, this was a bona fide jalopy, covered in intricate wallpapers with the sides folded open to reveal not cargo, but old framed photographs and a doily-covered sofa, pots and pans, and all the trappings of a home. It looked to Caelum like what would happen if Gardenia's pickup truck could will itself to become a dollhouse. A bearded, bespectacled man wedged a big chunk of coquina rock in front of one of the truck's wheels, while a white-haired woman cranked a pair of shade awnings that opened out like enormous wings from the truck's sides. On a small campfire next to the truck house, a kettle steamed. But you're not a Pegasus, whispered Caelum in disappointment as she stared hard at the old couple. What's that you said? Asked the woman. Nothing, answered Caelum, embarrassed now to have expected to find a magical being waiting for a lost thing like her. Who are you guys? She blurted out, a little more rudely than she had intended. Well, I'm Ellie, and this is Rasp. Hello! Rasp paused his tinkering with the tires to give a friendly wave. Ellie poured water into an old tin dish and set it on the ground. Tin ran over and lapped it gratefully. And thirsty as she was, Caelum was tempted to hop down on all fours and join him. Would you like some tea? It's peppermint. We grew it ourselves. Ellie pointed to a garden box full of herbs perched on a window of the truck house. Caelum nodded. Are you part of a circus? Your buggy kind of looks like it's from a circus. Ellie chuckled. No, we're not part of a circus. We're just travelers passing through. Caelum's eyes grew wide in wonderment. This dollhouse buggy moves around? That it does, answered Rasp, adjusting his glasses and peering at Caelum through the bottom of the bifocal as though she were a pane of glass he was inspecting to see if it was spotless or needed a washing. Ellie handed Caelum a teacup. As Caelum reached for the cup, Ellie took her hand and examined her fingernails. See these little white spots? That's malnutrition. Are you a picky eater, or does your mama not feed you right?
We don't have a mom. We live with a witch. She doesn't eat anything, so...
Ellie and Rasp exchanged a concerned look, which Caelum noticed and interrupted to explain.
But Gardenia gets groceries sometimes, or we eat at the neighbors.
Nice neighbors. Ellie smiled kindly, patted Caelum's hand, and disappeared into the truck house, re-emerging with a huge stack of hot, buttery cinnamon toast. Have a seat, my dear. Ellie motioned to an enormous white beanbag chair beside the truck. Caelum plopped down and dug into the crispy, buttery, glorious pile of toast, polishing off about 7 pieces and tossing her crust to 10. Caelum smiled up at the couple, thinking how fun it must be to have a house on wheels. Ellie sat on a nearby log, and Rasp settled in on the couch perched just inside the truck. They sat together in silence for a long while. Caelum watched the ancient pair, the white-haired lady and the bearded man, and noticed that their eyes shifted color, perhaps with their thoughts. From moment to moment, their eyes might go from a deep indigo, filled with a dozen points of light like stars on a clear night, to the cobalt of a hot summer afternoon, to the faded teal of a sky whose sunset has just begun to approach. When one of them looked upward, lost in thought, their eyes shone a pearl white that bloomed with the nimbus and nebulae of clouds.
Do you guys have kids?
Asked Caelum, breaking the dreamy silence. Yes, but they're grown-ups now, said Ellie.
What's your job?
Caelum wanted to know. I'm a painter, said Ellie, as she opened up a small book she kept in the breast pocket of her denim shirt to reveal a series of tiny paintings. Hearts with flames emerging out the top, lungs with flowers blooming inside them, and strange animals that Caelum had never seen before. Caelum was mesmerized.
You can paint that?
She asked, looking up into Ellie's soft, starlit eyes with awe. So can you, I bet, answered Ellie, giving Caelum a wink. Ellie opened the tiny book and carefully pulled a blank leaf of parchment paper. Out of that same shirt pocket, she produced a miniature set of watercolors and a dainty little brush. So much treasure. Caelum grabbed the materials greedily and set to work painting what she'd seen that morning. First, she laid down a background of clouds and soft pinks and purples just like those puffy fields stretching out in all directions, and danged if it wasn't so much fun recalling her vision that it just about took her back there. Next, Caelum lovingly crafted her best version of the Pegasus with a unicorn horn. She was already pretty good at drawing horses because Hutch had showed her how to draw a chestnut, so she took what she knew and added shimmering wings and those soft, knowing eyes that had looked right into hers. Proudly, she held her painting out to Ellie. Grinning, Ellie fished into her pocket for a painting of her own. Turning it around, she showed it to Caelum. Caelum's mouth popped open. It was the very same painting, only even more precisely the way she had seen it. Ellie's eyes twinkled. See? I told you we were here.